Welcome to Lobster's ODST Flip Visor tutorial. But before we start, I think I need to get trained in something a little more appropriate. Now that we got the right gear on, welcome to Lobster's ODST Flip Visor tutorial. We're going to be teaching you how to put this visor into that helmet so you can do this. If you think you're ready for it, you're going to require a couple skills. Soldering, electronics work, even basic craftsmanship are required for this project. If you think you're up for it, then get set for a combat drop, because we're about to begin the tutorial.
So before we can get cracking here, we're going to go ahead and cover the parts layout and kind of everything that's involved in this overall build. I have everything laid out on the table before us, and I'm also going to be having all of the parts and everything else is going to be in the guide that's going to be available on my website. You can use to kind of guide yourself along with this whole build tutorial. Everything will be linked in there, no affiliate links or anything, just whatever I used. So without further ado, let's get started with the wiring. So this is going to be the finalized wire guide, kind of how everything looks like when it's fully assembled, you know, all soldered up and ready to go. And then let's get that done. So I got a bit of the wiring process, just showing some generalized behind the scenes work on how all that gets soldered onto the board. I'm not the best solderer in the world, but it's not too much complicated stuff. As long as you have basic soldering, follow that guide on the top right there, you should be pretty much fine. Everything's labeled on there, all your wires are there. Just, you know, give it about an hour or so and you should have yourself a finalized board. So this is the coding that you're going to be seeing for the servo motor. Just familiarize yourself with some basic coding procedures. The servo pin 9 is going to be the pin you're going to be plugging the servo motor wire in, as you can see on the wiring guide. Number 5 is the button, which is the RF receiver pin. And then once we get down here to the actual code, now these are the real things you want to look into, is the servo positioning, right here, here, and here. So this number right here, that 105 that I have here, should always match the bottom else number. If that's not matching, the servo won't automatically reset itself whenever you're going back in and trying to bring the visor back down or up. After we've uploaded our code, we can go and give it a test on the actual board. As you can see here, it's actually working. So, you know, you're going to want to test that remote, make sure it goes to one position and back. And if it does, congrats, you did it. If it didn't, time to go back and look at that code and look at how you uploaded it. Now the coding is not yet finished though, so we'll be revisiting this when we go back in to look at our servo fitting. But for now, let's move on to actually getting that visor installed on the helmet. Here's the underside of the helmet now for the visor mounting. As you can see, there's longer screws on each side. That's going to be where the second visor hooks into. And there's shorter screws located around the bottom as just further reinforcement to make sure it stays in one spot. There's not much to it, it's a pretty simple process. And there's once again a shot from the front showing where those screws land. I drilled 2 extra holes by accident, don't do that. Now for installing the second visor, you're going to want to cut little screw holes in one side, and then give a little test fit in that visor first. So here I'm just cutting out my test hole, making sure that it's large enough for that screw to slip through, and then we're going to be installing that by using a washer, a nut, and then another washer, just to make sure that we're not actually damaging the visor the more it flips. Now once you get both those slots of the visor installed, just do a couple test flips with your hand just to make sure it all goes together well. I just kind of run it a couple times, make sure everything was smooth, don't want it to actually hit anything or coming into contact with any part of the outer visor, as that's going to impede the servo motor's function. Looking good, time to move on to actually getting that servo in. So before installing the servo on the side of the helmet, there's a pretty important thing to consider, and it's actually the curvature of the helmet. So as you can see as an example in that resin cast helmet, it's a little more curved than using something like this Skookum Props 3D printed helmet, where the line's a bit a little more defined, and I was able to almost have an internal wall to rest that servo up against. This won't necessarily affect the operation, it's just going to be something to take in consideration when figuring out how to mount and make sure that servo is properly secured for operation. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and work on getting that servo mounted in position. I'm going to be using hot glue to tack it down. Do not use hot glue as your final adhesive. Please use something like E6000, a epoxy putty, or even something like an actual epoxy to actually secure that in position. Hot glue though does give us a little bit more of an easier time to work with when it comes to testing and making sure everything actually fits the way that we kind of want it to do. So, you know, throw some hot glue in there. It doesn't need to look pretty, but as long as it tests and as long as you can get it to actually flip and work, for now, that's fine. And there we have it. One servo motor that's basically tacked in there, almost parallel with the actual visor, with a bit of space for us to work with and work on getting that next plate installed. The next step here is going to be getting that styrene plate installed. For the sake of your sanity, I would recommend using a clear plate when testing. So I'm going to be taking out the old visor here as a little bit of a demonstration. As you can see, the white styrene sheeting is what we're going to be installing. There's going to be a second screw installed behind our first screw that I'm putting on now. The reason we're doing this is because the way the visor moves is that's going to be giving us a larger range of motion. So that styrene sheet's the part that connects right into our servo motor there. There's going to be a little track that it runs across. So actually getting this cut out installed is very simple. Just as long as you're using that clear sheet, you're going to be wanting to drill a couple holes in the actual styrene sheet itself. And then afterwards we can go ahead and figure out where the visor articulates. So because the visor and the servo have two positions, up and down, we're going to want to make sure the servo is at the same position that the visor state's going to be in. So as you can see, I'm marking a position on the servo and the servo is in the down position and the visor's in the down position. Now I move the servo to be the next position of the visor and we're going to be going ahead and marking that as the visor's up. So as you can see, the visor's up. We made another point. I just used a Sharpie to mark this off. And then we're going to cut a line in between those two markings. Just a straight line, nothing too particular. Just make sure it's wide enough to fit that screw through. And make sure it's clean. Now once that line is cut, we'll just throw it right back on the servo in the position that we had it in the first place. And then line up that screw and then go ahead and give it a test. For the purpose of testing, I'm going to be putting in a washer just to make sure that it's not going to pop off on me and we can actually test it with the full system. Just like that, we have movement. So as you can see, it's going up and down. Not bad, not bad. It's going a little bit further than it should be. So as you can see in this first test, we got partial up, almost down. That's okay. That's part of the process. So the next step is now going to be going back in, modifying that code, and giving it another chance. So I'm going to adjust it by about 5-10 degrees on both sides. Make sure we're about where we're at. Now after that little adjustment going on there, voila. One up, one down. That is a fully functional servo visor. It's fully flipping, and we are so back. Now that our visor system is fully operational, we can go ahead and take a peek at the inside and everything we've installed. So first off is that styrene sheet with that track and the screw installed. When everything's good and you're happy with it how it is, I would highly recommend using thread locker or something to fully secure that screw in so it's not popping off at a convention. That large block you're going to want to take down to size and kind of make it a more slimmer profile so you can fit your head in there without any issues. The other side has the other screw in there, which is securing the other side of the visor to the helmet. That is also with an additional washer and a nut in there to help it separate it from the actual visor and to prevent contact. Now if you're curious for the reason on why that track's there, it is actually because the position of the screw changes in relation to the visor. So when it's up, the servo and the visor is further away, and when it's down, they're closer together. So that screw allows it to adjust for a little bit of space in order to run along that track and kind of continuation with a smooth visor. You can kind of see that even if the visor itself is a little messed up when you first start flipping it, it will automatically correct itself back to that original position on that track. Now flipping it from the inside, we can see that track in motion, bringing that visor to about halfway up the overall helmet. You will not be able to pad the first part of that helmet. However, you can put your power bank and any other electronics that you want to stuff up there, including the Arduino and the RF receivers where I usually store it. In my fully completed helmet, I also host a USB fan up there as an outflow vent, and it goes right across the visor, kind of get rid of some of that hot air going throughout the helmet. This is the power bank that I have, once again linked in the write-up that I've made, and that just sits in the top there. It has 2 USB ports, and the visor can just flip right over top of it. So for reference on how to fully end up padding your helmet, here's my completed ODST helmet. This has the visor and system installed along with padding, the battery bank, and everything else going on there. So as you can see, the padding only goes about to the middle of my head. The visor extends fully up to the edge of that padding. So something where I can put my head still on that padding and will not hit it. There you can see the visor articulating to the point of where it comes in contact with the padding. My head can still sit there without any issues. Now, because you can use padding on the front half of that helmet, I have that chin strap installed, and that helps to keep the helmet securely on my head while still allowing that visor system to be installed. It's way better than having foam squish on your cheeks like the first couple editions. The side paddings help me keep my head secure and off and away from that visor and servo motor there. And then to make sure that you're cool, there are 3 fans installed throughout that helmet. Now the ODST has a pretty large helmet in the front, so as you can see my head goes up in the middle. The front section is where that visor sits, the middle portion is where your head will lay.
You made it! You hopefully should have a flip visor that goes up and down with the flick of a button like this, and if you'd like, you can even put it into a glove like I've done here, so you can do that. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and hopefully it was useful enough for you to be able to properly make the system. If you have, I'd love to see it on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, whatever other social media platform you prefer. Just tag me at Lobster Cosplay on all platforms. Until then, I'll see you Starside.